Welcome, dear wanderers of the shadowed paths, to another descent into the abyss on throne of nightmares. I am your guide through the veiled corridors of history's forgotten horrors, where the past does not rest quietly but claws its way back into our waking world. Tonight we unearth a tale so insidious, so woven into the fabric of human dread, that it lingers like a chill breath on the nape of your neck long after the telling is done. We speak of the prophetic twins, Abigail and Constance Whitmore, a chilling mystery that unfolded in the mist-shrouded hills of Massachusetts in the year 1847. Imagine, if you will, the autumn of that fateful year. The leaves in New England turn not to gold, but to the bruised hues of decay, crimson like spilled blood, amber like the flicker of dying embers. The air carries the scent of damp earth and wood smoke, mingled with the faint, acrid tang of fear. In the small, pious town of Millbrook, nestled amid rolling fields and dense, whispering forests, the wind howls through cracked church steeples as if mourning secrets long buried. Millbrook was a place where God-fearing folk clung to their Bibles like lifelines against the encroaching wilderness, a remnant of Puritan zeal that echoed the ghosts of Salem's witch hunts from a century and a half before. Here, families toiled under grey skies, their lives a monotonous rhythm of prayer, harvest and suspicion toward anything that deviated from the divine order. It was into this rigid world that Abigail and Constance were born on a stormy night in 1839 to Benjamin and Rebecca Whitmore. Benjamin, a stern mill owner with hands calloused from turning grain into sustenance, was a pillar of the community, a man whose faith was as unyielding as the granite quarries that dotted the landscape. Rebecca, his devoted wife, was a woman of quiet grace, her eyes holding the soft glow of maternal warmth, though shadowed by the losses of two stillborn children before the twins' arrival. The birth itself was a miracle shrouded in omen. Thunder cracked the sky as the midwife pulled the girls into the world, identical in every way. Pale skin like fresh snow, hair as black as raven feathers, and eyes of piercing blue that seemed to hold the depth of ancient oceans. They emerged not crying separately, but in eerie unison, their wails harmonizing like a dirge. From their earliest days, the twins were inseparable, a living embodiment of duality. They moved as one, finished each other's sentences in a private language that no one else could decipher. Babble of whispers and gestures that sounded like wind through hollow reeds. The townsfolk marveled at them, calling them God's double blessing, but beneath the admiration simmered unease. For in Millbrook, where the legacy of witchcraft trials still whispered through family lore, anything too perfect invited scrutiny. Children who played too closely with the unseen were watched with narrowed eyes. As the years passed, Abigail and Constance grew into paragons of childhood innocence. By 1847, at the tender age of 8, they attended the one-room schoolhouse under the watchful gaze of Miss Catherine Thornfield, reciting psalms with voices that blended into a single, melodic chant. They embroidered samplers with biblical verses, their needles flashing in perfect rhythm, and helped their mother in the garden, where flowers seemed to bloom brighter under their touch. But innocence, dear listeners, is often the thinnest veil over something far darker. And in September of that year, as the harvest moon hung low and bloated in the sky, the veil began to tear. It started subtly, as all true nightmares do. One morning at breakfast, with the scent of porridge steaming in the crisp air and the fire crackling like brittle bones, the twins froze mid-bite. Their spoons hovered identical droplets of milk suspended in the air. Then, in voices that echoed as if from a deep well, they spoke in unison, "Farmer Henderson's cow will give milk like blood in 3 days' time." Benjamin chuckled uneasily, dismissing it as childish fancy. Rebecca crossed herself, her fork trembling. But 3 days later, when Henderson's prized heifer was milked, the pail filled with a viscous red liquid that reeked of iron. The farmer, pale as death, whispered of curses. Word spread like wildfire through Millbrook's taverns and church pews. The twins had seen the future, or had they invited it? This was no mere coincidence. More utterances followed, each more precise, each more unsettling. A child's fever foretold to the hour, a storm that would splinter the church roof, rain pouring in like tears from heaven. The girls would stare into nothingness, their blue eyes glazing over, and murmur prophecies that unfolded with chilling accuracy. The town buzzed with whispers. Were they blessed by angels or vessels for something infernal? Benjamin locked the doors at night, but no bolt could bar the encroaching dread. Rebecca, heavy with unspoken worry, noticed how the twins whispered in their sleep, their lips moving in sync as if conversing with ghosts. As autumn deepened, the forests around Millbrook seemed to close in, branches scratching at windows like skeletal fingers. The air grew thick with the rot of fallen leaves, and fog clung to the ground like a shroud. Families gathered around hearths, sharing tales of old New England hauntings, the vampire panics of Rhode Island, where the dead were exhumed and burned to stop their nocturnal wanderings, the lingering specters of Salem, where innocent blood cried out for justice. Into this cauldron of fear stepped Dr. Elias Cromwell, a learned physician from Boston, summoned by Benjamin to examine the girls. Cromwell, with his wire-rimmed spectacles and leather-bound journals, represented the dawning age of reason amid superstition. Yet even he felt the chill as he observed the twins, their pulses beating in perfect harmony, their breaths inhaling and exhaling as one. "Children," he asked, his voice steady but his hands betraying a tremor, "where do these words come from?" They turned their heads slowly, eyes locking onto his with an intensity that pierced the soul. "The things that will happen," they replied together, "sometimes speak to us." Cromwell's notes from that day, later burned in a fit of terror, described a sensation of being watched by multitudes, as if the girls' gazes held not two souls but legions. Reverend Samuel Hayes, the town's fire and brimstone preacher, visited next. His sermons had long warned of Satan's snares in the modern world. The influx of Irish immigrants fleeing famine, bringing their papist ways, the rumblings of abolitionist fervor that threatened the social order, he saw in the twins a test of faith. "Speak, little ones," he commanded, Bible in hand. "What does the Lord reveal?" They tilted their heads, listening to an unseen chorus, then intoned, "The church bell will crack in the next storm," crying out in pain. Days later, a gale howled through Millbrook, and the bell split with a sound like a human scream. 3 congregants fled the town that night, never to return. But the true horror was yet to unfold. One evening, as the family knelt for prayer, the twins' voices cut through the amen like a knife. "Mother will die in 7 days at the hour of evening prayer. The child inside her will not draw breath." Rebecca blanched, her hand flying to her abdomen. She had confided in no one about her secret pregnancy, not even Benjamin. The room filled with the scent of fear, sweat and candle wax, the flames flickering as if disturbed by phantom breaths. Dear listeners, pause here with me. Feel the weight of that moment, the hearth's warmth turning clammy, the shadows lengthening like accusing fingers. What force had granted these children sight into the hidden corners of fate? Were they harbingers of doom, or doomed themselves? As the days ticked down, Rebecca wasted away, her skin paling, her eyes hollowing with dread. The twins watched her with detached curiosity, whispering prophecies of her final breaths. On the 7th day, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the family gathered once more, Rebecca collapsed, blood staining her skirts. She gasped, They see everything," before expiring exactly as foretold. The town reeled. Whispers turned to accusations. Were Abigail and Constance witches, echoes of Salem's accused, or prophets in an age that had forgotten how to listen? Benjamin, grief-stricken, locked the girls away, but their voices seeped through the walls like mist. And then came the revelation that would shatter Millbrook's soul. The twins were not mere seers. They were something far worse, a bridge between the living and the dead, a repository of forgotten agonies that refused to stay buried. This, my haunted audience, is where our tale plunges into the abyss. But hold fast, the night is young and the shadows deepen. What secrets did the dead whisper through those innocent lips, and what price did Millbrook pay for peering into tomorrow's grave? Stay with me as we delve into the heart of the nightmare, As the echo of Rebecca's final breath hung in the air like a curse, Benjamin Whitmore staggered back, his world unraveling. The twins, Abigail and Constance, sat unmoved, their small hands folded in their laps, eyes reflecting the candlelight like polished obsidian. The room smelled of iron and despair, the metallic tang of blood mingling with the waxen scent of extinguished life. Outside, the wind moaned through the eaves, as if the spirits of Millbrook were lamenting the breach between worlds. In the days following Rebecca's death, the town descended into a fevered hush. Doors bolted earlier, lanterns burned brighter, and prayers grew longer. Benjamin, his face etched with lines that aged him a decade overnight, confined the girls to their upstairs chamber. But confinement could not silence the unseen. Night after night he heard them whispering soft, rhythmic murmurs that slithered under doors and through floorboards. "They speak to us," the twins had said. But who, or what, was speaking? Let us step back, dear listeners, to understand the soil from which this terror sprouted. The Whitmore family home stood on the outskirts of Millbrook, a sturdy two-story structure of weathered clapboard, its windows like watchful eyes overlooking fields that stretched toward the foreboding woods. Benjamin had built it with his own hands, each nail driven with the conviction of a man forging his legacy against the wild. Rebecca had filled it with warmth, handmade quilts in patterns of stars and crosses, shelves lined with preserves that glowed like jewels in the pantry light. The twins' room was a sanctuary of simplicity. 2 identical beds with white linens, a shared dresser topped with a Bible, and walls adorned with their embroidered samplers bearing verses like, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." But even before the prophecies, there were signs. As toddlers, Abigail and Constance had shared dreams, waking in unison to recount visions of floating lights in the forest or voices calling from the well. Benjamin dismissed them as fancies, but Rebecca wondered. In 1845, when a fever swept through Millbrook, claiming a dozen lives, the twins fell ill together. For 3 days, they burned with heat, their bodies convulsing in perfect sync. The midwife, old widow Hargrove, muttered of twin souls entangled, her gnarled fingers tracing protective sigils on their foreheads. They recovered, but changed. Quieter, more inward, their private language evolving into something almost melodic like a forgotten hymn. By 1847, Millbrook was a town on the cusp of change. The industrial hum from nearby Lowell's mills echoed faintly, drawing young men away with promises of wages. Irish immigrants, fleeing the Great Famine, arrived in waves, their gaunt faces and Catholic crosses stirring old Puritan suspicions. Abolitionist pamphlets circulated in secret, whispering of moral reckonings. Amid this, the twins' prophecies began as ripples but swelled into waves. The first public incident came at school. Miss Thornfield, a spinster with a voice like cracking ice, noticed the girls staring out the window during lessons. "What do you see, children?" she asked. "In unison, your brother Marcus will fall at sunset, his heart stopping as he whispers Catherine." Thornfield laughed nervously, but that evening, her brother, a sturdy blacksmith, collapsed in his forge, murmuring her name as life ebbed. The school emptied the next day, parents clutching their children close. Word reached Dr. Cromwell in Boston, a man versed in the emerging sciences of the mind. He arrived on a drizzling October afternoon, his carriage splashing mud like inky blood. Cromwell was tall, ascetic, with a beard trimmed to a point and eyes that dissected rather than saw. He set up in the Whitmore parlor, instruments gleaming, stethoscopes, phrenology charts, even a rudimentary galvanic battery to measure vital energies. "Science will unravel this," he assured Benjamin, but his voice wavered. Observing the twins, Cromwell noted their physiological unity, the heartbeats synchronized to the millisecond, breaths mirroring like reflections in a pond. He tested them with questions. "What will happen to the Reverend's books?" They replied, "Fire will claim them in the night, page by page turning to ash." That very evening, Hayes's study ignited mysteriously. No candle left burning, yet flames devoured his library. Hayes, singed and shaken, confronted Benjamin. "These are not children of God. They caught the devil's knowledge." As November's frosts hardened the ground, the prophecies darkened. The twins spoke of Eleanor Wilson, a neighbor's wife. She will lose her child when the oak leaves turn fully brown, blood on the snow. Wilson, pregnant and terrified, barricaded herself, but miscarriage struck precisely as leaves fell, her screams piercing the night. Secrets spilled forth too, private sins laid bare. Mrs. Prudence Hartwell found a hidden letter from her husband's mistress, exactly where the twins described. Dr. Cromwell's own doubts were voiced. Hay questions God's silence, experiments in secret with forbidden elixirs. Benjamin, tormented, demanded answers. One stormy evening, as lightning etched the sky like veins, he burst into their room. "What are you?" The twins, sitting cross-legged on the floor amid chalk-drawn symbols, intricate geometries resembling maps of stars or veins, looked up. "We are the memory of Millbrook," they said. "The dead live in us, their experiences, their pains, their futures unspoken." It was then the true nature emerged. During that fever 2 years prior, their minds had touched a collective veil, a tapestry woven from every soul departed in Millbrook since its founding. Graves in the churchyard held not just bones, but echoes, farmers crushed by plows, women lost in childbirth, children claimed by pox. These memories flooded the twins, granting them not clairvoyance, but pattern recognition, ability to extrapolate tomorrows from yesterday's tragedies. "We see the threads," they explained, voices blending into a chorus. "The town feeds us its history, and we weave its end." Horror gripped Benjamin. The twins revealed his own buried guilt, a youthful theft from the mill, a hushed affair before Rebecca. But worse, they foretold the spread. "If we stay, other children will hear the voices. Millbrook will become a chorus of the dead." Panic rippled through the town. Meetings in the church, now with its cracked bell tolling discordantly, debated solutions, exorcism, isolation. Some whispered of Salem's old ways, fire to purify. Cromwell, fascinated yet repelled, documented feverishly. "They are evolution's cruel jest," he wrote, minds merged into a hive of history. Hayes, faith-fracturing, predicted his own fall. "I will leave the cloth when the first snow falls." It did, and he vanished into the night, robes discarded like shed skin. As December's chill descended, snow blanketing the world in white silence, the twins issued their final prophecy. "We will die on the road to Boston, embraced in cold, to spare the town." Benjamin, desperate, arranged transport to a Boston asylum for study. On a bitter morning, as the cracked bell rang a farewell, the carriage departed. The girls waved from the window, whispering, "Don't forget, we always knew this was the only way." 3 days later, searchers found the carriage overturned in a drift, the driver frozen at the reins. Inside, Abigail and Constance lay entwined, faces serene, no marks of violence, just the peaceful repose of those who had foreseen their end. Their bodies, cold as marble, were buried beside Rebecca, but the grave soil seemed to whisper ever after. With the twins interred, Millbrook exhaled a collective breath, believing the nightmare sealed beneath earth. But dear listeners, true terrors do not die so easily. They fester, rooting deeper into the psyche like ivy choking a forgotten tomb. The snows of 1847 melted into an uneasy spring, but the prophecies lingered, unfolding like delayed poison. Benjamin Whitmore, a shell of his former self, wandered his empty home. The parlor, once alive with Rebecca's laughter, now echoed with silence broken only by creaks that sounded like whispers. He burned the twins' belongings, their samplers curling into ash, symbols twisting in the flames like living things. Yet at night, he heard voices, faint echoes of Abigail and Constance, reciting futures yet to pass. 7 families will lose their homes to debt, they had said before departure. By summer, foreclosures struck exactly 7 households, their cries mingling with auctioneers' hammers. Dr. Cromwell returned to Boston, his journals a chaotic scrawl. He spoke little of Millbrook, but rumors spread. Patients in his care began muttering prophecies, eyes glazing like the twins. One, a young girl, predicted her own death and perished accordingly. Cromwell destroyed his notes in a fit, but fragments survived, describing the twins as conduits to a collective unconscious where death's knowledge bleeds into life. He died in 1852, whispering of threads on his deathbed. Reverend Hayes's disappearance fueled darker tales. Found months later in a Lowell tavern, broken and faithless, he babbled of the twins' revelations, shattering his belief. They showed me God is silent because the dead drown him out. He confessed before vanishing again, perhaps to the sea's embrace. The town itself transformed. Children avoided the Whitmore house, claiming to see two identical figures in the windows, hands pressed to glass. Farmers reported crops blighted in patterns matching the twins' chalk drawings. And the prophecies continued. Posthumous echoes. A disease swept Millbrook in 1848, claiming lives as foretold. Whispers in the wind carried warnings. The river will flood when the moon weeps blood. In 1850, a lunar eclipse coincided with inundation, drowning livestock and unearthing old graves. Investigators from Boston arrived in 1848, drawn by newspaper whispers. The Boston Courier ran a sensational piece, Millbrook's Oracle Children, Gift or Curse. They interviewed survivors, piecing together 47 documented prophecies, all fulfilled. One chilling entry. The twins had predicted the Irish famine's ripple, saying, "Strangers from across the sea will bring hunger's shadow, and Millbrook will feed on its own." Indeed, immigrants arrived, straining resources, leading to thefts and feuds. But the deepest wound was psychological. Families fractured under revealed secrets. Prudence Hartwell, her marriage shattered, hanged herself in the barn, note reading, "They knew, and now all do." Others fled, leaving Millbrook a ghost of itself. The church, bell forever silent, hosted sermons on fate's cruelty. Benjamin's final years were haunted. In 1865, on his deathbed, he dictated a confession. The girls were right. The dead never leave. I hear them now, the chorus grows. His grave, beside his family's, was said to hum on winter nights, vibrations like buried voices. Years later, folklorists unearthed more. In 1890, a descendant found a hidden diary in the Whitmore attic, Rebecca's, detailing early signs, dreams of drowning in memories, the twins babbling names of long-dead relatives. "They carry the town's sins," she wrote. "The mystery endures. Were the twins psychic anomalies, or did Millbrook's history, layered with native displacements, Puritan repressions, emerging industrial despair, manifest through them? Their collective memory echoes emerging spiritualism. The Fox sisters' rappings began in 1848, as if the twins' veil tear rippled outward. In the end, Abigail and Constance Whitmore became legend, their story whispered around New England fires. But listen closely on foggy nights in Massachusetts. Do you hear the whispers? Two voices, in perfect unison, foretelling what is to come. To grasp the full chill of the prophetic twins' tale, we must delve into the cauldron of 1847 Massachusetts, a year when the old world of superstition clashed with the dawning gears of modernity, brewing a perfect storm for such a mystery. Massachusetts, the cradle of American independence, was by mid-19th century a tapestry of contrasts. Bustling industrial hubs like Lowell and Boston juxtaposed against rural hamlets like our fictionalized Millbrook, where Puritan echoes still reverberated. 1847 was marked by global upheavals rippling to these shores. The Irish potato famine, peaking that year, sent waves of immigrants fleeing starvation. In Boston on February 18, citizens gathered at Faneuil Hall to rally aid, their speeches laced with humanitarian zeal but undercut by nativist fears. These papists brought not just hunger, but cultural clashes, Catholic rituals clashing with Protestant austerity. In small towns, rumors swirled of curses carried across the Atlantic, fueling suspicions that mirrored the twins' prophecies of strangers bringing hunger's shadow. Politically, Massachusetts simmered with reform. The 1847 legislature under President William B. Calhoun debated education and labor laws amid the Lowell Mill women's strikes, the first union of working women demanding better conditions in factories that ground souls like grain. This industrial shift disrupted rural life. Families like the Whitmores felt the pull, with mills luring labor and eroding traditional faiths. Abolitionism intensified too. In July 1847, anti-slavery documents revealed Baptist stances, echoing moral reckonings that questioned divine order, much like the twins' revelations shattered personal faiths. Culturally, New England was fertile ground for the eerie. The legacy of the 1692 Salem witch trials loomed large, with over 200 accused and 20 executed. By 1847, Salem's ghosts were folklore staples, tales of spectral evidence and hanged innocents warning against hysteria. Yet superstition persisted. The New England vampire panic spanning 1780s, 1890s saw bodies exhumed and hearts burned to halt consumption. See tuberculosis blamed on undead kin. Cases like Mercy Brown's in 1892 echoed earlier ones in 1847. Similar fears in Rhode Island and Massachusetts made townsfolk quick to see demonic influences in anomalies like the twins. Folklore abounded. Aunt Rachel's curse in Plymouth, an early 19th century legend of a widow cursing sailors who wronged her, spoke to outcast women wielding supernatural power. The Hoosac Tunnel ghosts, though later, drew from 19th century mining horrors. Native American influences lingered too. Algonquian tales of prophetic dreams and twin heroes, like the Navajo monster slayers, blended with European myths of twins as divine or rival forces. As in Greek Dioscuri or Roman Romulus and Remus, the dawn of spiritualism in 1848 with the Fox sisters, rappings in Hydesville, New York, felt prescient. Their claims of communicating with the dead mirrored the twins' collective memory, suggesting a cultural readiness for such phenomena amid grief from wars, famines, and epidemics. The 1840s saw phrenology and mesmerism popular, with doctors like Cromwell experimenting in animal magnetism to probe minds, tools that failed against the twins' enigma. In this context, the prophetic twins emerged not as isolated horror, but a confluence of rural towns' fears amplified by immigration, industrial change, and lingering occult beliefs. Their story blends fact, real 1847 events, with folklore, creating unsettling authenticity. Massachusetts' history of persecution, the witches, Quakers, made communities prone to turning on the other, as Millbrook did. Educational yet eerie, this backdrop reveals how the past's traumas birth present nightmares, the dead's whispers shaping the living's fate. Beneath the surface chill of the prophetic twin saga lies a labyrinth of symbolic and psychological depths, connecting to universal fears and human nature's darkest recesses. This tale is no mere ghost story. It's a mirror reflecting our terror of predestination, the burden of collective trauma, and the fragility of individual identity in the face of the unknown. Symbolically, twins embody duality, the light and shadow within us all. Abigail and Constance, identical yet fused into one entity, represent the Jungian, shadow self, repressed memories and sins surfacing through their prophecies. Their collective memory symbolizes the archetype of the ancestral curse, akin to Freud's unconscious where past traumas lurk. In New England folklore, twins often signify omens. Here, they become vessels for the town's unburied dead, illustrating how history's wounds fester if ignored. The chalk symbols they drew, geometric maps, evoke mandalas, symbols of wholeness, but twisted into foreshadows of fragmentation, mirroring society's breakdown under revealed truths. Psychologically, the story probes precognition's horror. If the future is knowable, free will is illusion. The twins' extrapolations from past patterns suggest determinism, echoing Calvinist predestination that haunted Puritan descendants. Benjamin's grief and the town's panic reflect cognitive dissonance, faith clashing with evidence of a mechanistic universe. Cromwell's fascination hints at 19th century pseudosciences probing the mind, prefiguring modern psychology's exploration of shared delusions or cryptomnesia, forgotten memories resurfacing as prophecy. Thematically, it connects to cultural trauma. Massachusetts, witch hunts symbolize mass hysteria where fear of the other leads to destruction. The twins, innocent yet ominous, become scapegoats, their deaths a ritual purging. This ties to universal fears of contagion, literal fevers, famines and metaphorical ideas spreading like the prophecies. In an era of immigration, they embody xenophobia, outsiders even within disrupting order. Human nature's hubris shines through. The town's attempt to control the uncontrollable mirrors Prometheus stealing fire, punished by eternal torment. The lingering whispers post-death suggest immortality's curse, knowledge without peace. Ominously, it questions consciousness. Are we singular, or nodes in a web of shared experience? Modern parallels abound. AI predicting behaviors from data echoes the twins' pattern, weaving, raising ethical dreads. Intellectually, the tale warns of suppressing history, unacknowledged pasts return haunt. It haunts because it taps eternal questions. What if the dead speak? What if fate is written in our collective scars? In this ominous lens, the prophetic twins are not anomaly, but harbinger, reminding us the veil between yesterday and tomorrow is perilously thin. As our journey through the shadowed annals of the prophetic twins draws to a close, let us linger in the twilight of its implications, where the chill of 1847 Massachusetts seeps into our bones like groundwater from forgotten graves. Abigail and Constance Whitmore, those ethereal vessels of tomorrow's whispers, did not merely predict doom. They embodied it, weaving the threads of Millbrook's buried past into a tapestry of inevitable unraveling. Their story, exhumed from dusty journals and whispered folklore, serves as a somber elegy to the fragility of human certainty. Recall the arc of terror, from the harmonious birth under stormy skies to the synchronized prophecies that peeled back the town's veneers of piety and secrecy. Rebecca's foretold demise, the community's fracturing faith, the twins' serene acceptance of their frozen end, all culminating in posthumous echoes that defied the grave. Benjamin's final confessions, Cromwell's burned notes, Hayes's shattered soul. These remnants underscore a truth as cold as New England's winter. Knowledge of the future is not empowerment, but a chain binding us to fate's inexorable march. Yet the mystery endures, a lingering question that haunts the misty hills of Massachusetts to this day. Were the twins divine messengers, demonic conduits, or simply the cruel evolution of consciousness? A glitch in the human matrix where death's archive bleeds into life. Reports persist. On foggy anniversaries, children's voices murmur from Millbrook's abandoned churchyard, foretelling mundane misfortunes that unfailingly occur. Descendants whisper of inherited dreams, patterns repeating like echoes in a well. Is this mere legend, or does the collective memory they unlocked still pulse beneath the soil, waiting for new vessels? In the grander scheme, this tale echoes across time, a cautionary spectre amid our own era's prophecies. Scientific forecasts of doom, algorithmic predictions shaping destinies. It leaves us haunted by the veil's thinness. What if your own history, suppressed and silent, begins to speak? What futures might it weave? Dear listeners, as the fire dims and shadows claim the room, carry this with you. The dead do not forget, and neither should we. For in forgetting, we invite their return. Sleep uneasily, for the prophetic whispers may yet call your name. Until next we meet on the throne of nightmares, where forgotten horrors await. Good night.